The greatest of all time conversation within the UFC community has been heating up lately, and today we'll decide who really deserves the title of the UFC GOAT. Welcome to MMA Today. I'll be counting down top 10 UFC fighters of all time. Please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment on who you believe is the greatest of all time. And coming in at number 10 on our list, we have the current UFC heavyweight champion, Stipe is widely regarded as the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. He made his UFC debut back in 2011, and since then went on to win 8 of his next 10 fights, and eventually knocked out Fabricio Verdum to claim the heavyweight champion in 2016.
Cleveland, we got champion, baby! Jump Croatia, we got champion!
Cleveland, nós somos campeões.
He then went on to defend his title against notable fighters such as Alistair Overeem, Junior Dos Santos, and Francis Ngannou. He would eventually lose to Daniel Cormier in their first meetup. However, Stipe would come back and win their rematch, and then most recently win by decision to complete their trilogy.
The greatest UFC heavyweight champion of all time, without a doubt now.
And coming in at number 9 on our list, we have the former featherweight and lightweight champion,
The one, the only, the notorious Conor McGregor!
Conor is undoubtedly the biggest star in the organization's history, and with his impressive 22-4 record, it isn't hard to see why. Conor first bursted onto the scene in 2013 and racked up 6 straight wins, with 5 of those being knockouts. Eventually, he would knock out the very dominant Jose Aldo in just 13 seconds to win the featherweight championship. However, he would lose to Nate Diaz in his next fight, counting as his first UFC loss. Conor would avenge that loss in their rematch by defeating Nate Diaz in 2016. And McGregor would go on to knock out Eddie Alvarez to win the UFC lightweight championship that same year and become the first UFC fighter to hold 2 titles in 2 different weight classes simultaneously. After taking some time away from the UFC, Conor McGregor would return and face the current lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. Conor would eventually lose that fight via submission, but this fight racked up 2.4 million pay-per-view buys, the biggest in the organization's history. Conor would be higher on this list had not been for his inactivity, his outside the octagon controversies, and never being able to defend any of his titles. Still, he does deserve a place on this list among the all-time greats.
Because make no mistake, I'm setting up to be the greatest of all time. I am working towards it, and I will go down as the greatest of all time.
Coming in at number 8 on our list, we have Amanda the Lioness Nunes. She is the current women's bantamweight and featherweight champion. With a record of 20 wins and 4 losses, she without a doubt is the greatest women's fighter in the UFC history. She entered the UFC back in 2013 and would go on to win 5 of her next 6 fights before submitting Miesha Tate for the bantamweight title. She then would shock the world by easily dismantling former champion Ronda Rousey to defend her title. She would go on to defend her title against Valentina Shevchenko and Raquel Pennington. Nunes would then move up in weight to face Cris Cyborg for the UFC Women's Featherweight Championship back in 2018. Nunes would knock out Cyborg with just 51 seconds left of the first round and become the new UFC Featherweight Champion. This made her the first woman in UFC history to hold 2 belts in 2 different weight classes simultaneously. Nunes will also defend her title against Holly Holm and Germaine de Randamie, meaning that she has defeated every former women's champion in the promotion's history.
You've essentially cleaned out both the bantamweight and the featherweight divisions.
No,
please, what do you do from here?
I don't know. That was my goal, defending my 2 belts. The same time, I'm defending both belts. I'm in the grades, I'm so happy right now. I don't know what is next.
And coming in at number 7, we have Triple C himself, Henry Cejudo. The former Olympic gold medalist was signed with the UFC in 2014, making him the 3rd Olympic gold medalist wrestler in the company's history. Cejudo would go on to win his first 4 fights with the promotion before suffering 2 back-to-back losses to flyweight champion Demetrius Johnson and Joseph Benavidez. But Cejudo was determined to claim that UFC gold and went on to win his next 2 fights before rematching Demetrius Johnson for the title. Cejudo would win by split decision in their rematch and become the flyweight champion. He would then go on to defend his title by knocking out bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw. Dillashaw would test positive for EPO and be forced to relinquish his bantamweight title. Henry saw the opportunity and took it to move up in weight and defeat Marlon Moraes for the vacant bantamweight title, and thus the nickname Triple C was born. This win made Cejudo the 4th fighter to hold championships simultaneously in 2 different weight divisions in the UFC. Cejudo would successfully defend his bantamweight title by knocking out former bantamweight champion Dominick Cruz. Immediately after the Cruz fight, Cejudo would announce his retirement from professional fighting altogether.
I'm 33 years old. I've always put myself in front, and I'm just looking forward to start that new chapter in my life, man. I want to leave up top. I want to leave on my terms. I'm happy. I'm satisfied with my career. I saved the division. I won the flyweight title, the bantamweight title. I defended both. There's nothing more to prove, man. So I want to wish everybody at the bantamweight, the flyweight division, I want to wish you guys all love and success. Even though I might have said a bunch of crazy things to you guys, you know, it all came out of promotion, out of love, man. So thank each and every one of you.
And coming in at number 6 on our list, we have the former UFC light heavyweight champion and heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier. After the 2008 Olympics, DC decided to pursue a mixed martial arts career by signing with Strikeforce. DC went on to win the Strikeforce Championship in 2012. And after Strikeforce was bought by the UFC, DC made his debut in 2013. After winning 3 straight fights and defeating Dan Henderson, DC would go on to challenge the very dominant Jon Jones for the light heavyweight championship. Their rivalry would go down as one of the most intense rivalries in UFC history. Unfortunately, Jones would get the better of DC in their first meeting, defeating him by unanimous decision. Jones would later be stripped from his title following a hit and run incident, and that would leave the door open for DC to claim the UFC light heavyweight title by defeating Anthony Rumble Johnson. DC would go on to defend his title against notable fighters such as Alexander Gustafsson, Anderson Silva, and Rumble Johnson a second time. DC would eventually meet Jones again for one more title bout and would lose to Jones again, this time via knockout. However, Jones tested positive for steroids and would be stripped again from the title. DC would be reinstated as the champ and would end up defending his title one more time against Volkan Oezdemir, before challenging Stipe Miocic for his heavyweight championship. DC would win the heavyweight title by defeating Stipe via knockout and become a double champ. Daniel Cormier would defend his heavyweight title against Derek Lewis, and he defeated Lewis via rear naked choke in the second round, becoming the first UFC fighter to defend both titles.
Champ. Ooh, I get to look at this twice. 2 belts, one on each shoulder, baby. Thank you for blessing me, Dana White. I thought I was just getting one, but boy, look at that. Woo, woo.
And coming in at number 5 on our list, we have Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. Demetrius Johnson is probably the most well-rounded fighter in UFC history. The former flyweight champion came into the UFC as a bantamweight back in 2011. He would eventually lose to champion Dominic Cruz. Following this loss, the UFC would create a flyweight division at 125 pounds, and then Johnson would participate in a tournament where he would become the division's first champion in 2012. Johnson would go on to have the longest single title reign in UFC history with a staggering 11 title defenses. Johnson is by far the most underrated superstar the UFC has ever had, and definitely deserves his recognition for the work he's put in.
Now that it's over, can you put it into words for us what the streak means and how proud of it you are?
Yeah, it was a great streak, and it's not over yet, you know what I mean? Like I said, I do it because I love it. You know, I've already way exceeded my expectations. I was the guy who was in a warehouse making $10.76 an hour, running home to watch Joseph Benavidez fight Dominic Cruz. So my dream was never to be a world champion. My dream was just to learn how to do mixed martial arts. And when I did that, I became passionate about it, and this is the path that it led me on. So I'm happy with my run. I'm going to get back home, get healthy, and then go from there.
Coming in at number 4, we have Anderson the Spider Silva. The former UFC middleweight champion entered the UFC in 2006, and in just in his second fight with the promotion, he was able to knock out Rich Franklin for the middleweight championship. Silva would go on an unprecedented streak within the UFC like no one's ever seen before. He defended his middleweight title a record of 10 times over the past 7 years, and during his reign, Silva has won 16 consecutive fights in total while competing in the UFC. He was able to defend his title against notable fighters such as Dan Henderson, Forrest Griffin, Damian Maia, Chael Sonnen, and Vitor Belfort. Silva's first loss in the UFC came in 2013 against Chris Weidman, and although he was the heavy favorite, he lost by knockout in the second round after showboating, ending his streak for the longest title reign in UFC history.
Former champion Anderson, very gracious in your applauding for Chris Weidman. Anderson, you were playing, you were dropping your hands and taunting him, and you got caught.
Unfortunately, Silva's career would take a downward dip after suffering back-to-back losses to Chris Weidman and a gruesome leg injury. Many people called for Anderson to retire. However, Silva would sign back with the UFC, and in just in his first fight post-injury, Silva would come back and face Nick Diaz in 2015. He would go on to win the fight via unanimous decision, and in days after the fight, it was revealed that Silva tested positive for anabolic steroids, and he was suspended for 1 year following his victory, and it was overturned to a no contest. Silva would go on to win only one of his next 6 fights and retire following his most recent defeat against Uriah Hall. And at number 3, we have Jon Jones. The former UFC light heavyweight champion is widely regarded as one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. Entering the UFC back in 2008, Jones would win his first 3 fights with the promotion before being disqualified in a battle against Matt Hamill. Despite dominating Hamill the entire fight, Jones was disqualified for the use of multiple 12-6 elbows, and following this loss, Jones would go on to dominate his next 3 opponents before challenging light heavyweight champion Mauricio Shogun Rua. On March 19, 2011, Jones defeated Rua by TKO, becoming the youngest ever UFC champion at just 23 years old. Jones would go on an incredible run, defending his title 11 times, with 5 of those wins coming from former champions. Jones defeated notable fighters such as Quentin Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, Alexander Gustafsson, and Daniel Cormier. Despite having all these amazing achievements and clearing out the light heavyweight division, Jones will be held back because of his fair share of controversies. One of those controversies happened on April 27th of 2015. Jones was involved in a hit-and-run incident where he fled the scene after hitting the car of a pregnant woman. The UFC stripped Jones of his title, removed him from the official rankings, and suspended him indefinitely. On August 27th of 2017, it was announced that Jones was flagged for a potential doping violation by USADA. He tested positive for steroids following his rematch with DC, and he was handed a 15-month suspension by USADA plus 3 months of community service, and he had to give up his title again. There's always going to be that question mark on the greatness of Jon Jones thanks to a lot of these controversies.
I'm talking to all you Khabib fans out there. 15 world titles to your guys 4. And you guys are really talking about who's the best fighter ever? You guys are joking, right? 15-4? Are you guys kidding me? The only person that could possibly come back and challenge my record and what I've done in the UFC is possibly George St. Pierre. He would have to come back and win 2 championship fights to tie me. And I'm not even retired yet. I'm 33 years old. We got a whole nother chapter to go through. You guys are nuts. I love you guys so much. I hope you guys all have a great day. 15 world championships to 4. And if all you guys are going with this he's more dominant argument, the guy just recently started fighting elite level competition. Could you imagine me against the number 10th ranked guy?
At number 2, we have the former welterweight and middleweight champion George St. Pierre. GSP is widely regarded as the greatest welterweight of all time, winning the title on 2 separate occasions. GSP entered the UFC back in 2004, and after winning his first 2 fights with the promotion, he would challenge Matt Hughes for the vacant title. Hughes would get the better of GSP, defeating him by submission in their first match, but GSP would work his way up the rankings following the loss, and he would go on a 5-fight win streak and defeat notable fighters such as Frank Trigg, Sean Shirk, and BJ Penn before rematching Hughes again for the title. This time GSP would come out on top, dominating Hughes in the rematch and winning the title via head kick KO. However, this championship will be short-lived as Matt Serra defeats GSP in his next fight via TKO, pulling off arguably the biggest upset in UFC history. GSP will work his way up the rankings again and defeat Matt Hughes for a second time before rematching Serra for the title. This time GSP would come out on top and dominate Serra in the rematch, TKO him in the second round to reclaim his welterweight championship. GSP will then go on to defend his title a total of 9 times, which is currently the welterweight record. GSP would officially announce in 2013 that he will vacate the title and take some time off from MMA. However, he would return in 2017 to face middleweight champion Michael Bisping. GSP defeated Bisping via submission in the 3rd round to become the middleweight champion and the 4th person in UFC history to become a champion in multiple divisions. St. Pierre officially announced his retirement on February 21st of 2019, and the UFC announced St. Pierre will be inducted to the UFC Hall of Fame. And finally, taking our number 1 spot as the greatest of all time, we have
Khabib, the Eagle!
The first thing that stands out with Khabib is that he's undefeated, but this is what really pushes him over the edge. It's that he's completely dominated every single opponent he's ever faced. Khabib entered the UFC in 2012, and despite battling a lot of injuries, he was able to rack up 9 straight wins before facing Al Iaquinta for the vacant lightweight championship. Khabib dominated that fight and won via unanimous decision to become the UFC lightweight champion. Khabib will go on to face Conor McGregor in 2018, and this matchup turned into one of the most anticipated fights in UFC history, as both fighters clearly hated each other. In that fight, Khabib won the first 2 rounds but lost to McGregor in the 3rd. It was the first time Khabib lost a round in his UFC career. However, he would go on to dominate McGregor for the rest of the fight and win by submission in the 4th round. After that fight, Khabib scaled the octagon and tried to attack McGregor's teammates, which resulted in a brawl between both teams. Khabib would be spending 9 months following the incident. However, the event was very successful, drawing 2.4 million pay-per-view buys, the most ever in an MMA event. Following his suspension, Khabib would face Dustin Poirier for the 2nd title defense. This would be the first fight in Khabib's UFC career where his father will be in attendance. Khabib was able to control Dustin for most of the fight and defeated him via rear naked choke in the 3rd round. Unfortunately, tragedy struck Khabib earlier this year. His father was placed in a medically induced coma after contracting 19 following his heart surgery. He died on July 3rd, 2020, and questions came as to whether we will ever see Khabib fight again. However, Khabib will return and face Justin Gaethje to defend his lightweight title. And just like the rest of his fights, Khabib was able to dominate Justin and submit him in the second round and defend his title. In his post-fight interview, a very emotional Khabib announced his retirement from the UFC. No fighter has ever been as extraordinarily dominant as Khabib. The hardest thing for an athlete to do is retire when he's on top. But if anybody could do it, it's Khabib. And he has built a resume to stake his claim as the greatest UFC fighter of all time.
Why I want to be free? Because I'm eagle. I want to fly, just fly. When my time comes, I'm gonna die, you know. But before my time comes, I want to be fly, you know. I want to be free. I want to do whatever I want, you know. I want to spend time with my family, friends, with my people, you know. I want to living in my village. And because even if you have all world, you're gonna die. Everything is gonna be finished one day. And couple people gonna come to grave, put you inside the